Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Americas. I'm Jeannie Godula. Coming up, as California is hit with the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in its history, we'll take a look at how climate change could be to blame. Then the trial of infamous drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman opened in New York this week. The Mexican kingpin ran drug routes around the world for 2 decades. And former First Lady Michelle Obama launches her new book to a crowd of 14,000 adoring fans in Chicago. More on Becoming on the way. First, California continued to burn this week with thousands of firefighters battling the flames on both ends of the state, north and south. 250,000 people were forced to evacuate, with the biggest fire burning through an entire town, leaving 7,000 houses in ruins and dozens of people dead. It is the worst wildfire in California history, and as the flames rage on, the state is bracing for more infernos due to climate change. Cole Stangler reports.
They're bigger, they're more destructive, and there's more of them. As California emerges from a historic drought, massive wildfires are an increasingly common fact of life, something the fire chief of Los Angeles recently acknowledged.
This is the 6th year of 7 years of drought here in this region. So our firefighters have been facing some extreme, tough fire conditions that they said that they've never seen in their life.
A recent report from the state was blunt. Climate change will make forests more susceptible to extreme wildfires, and the frequency of such large-scale blazes could increase by 50%. Blazes like the Mendocino Complex fire this summer. Climate change means weather that's both hotter and drier, ideal circumstances for wildfires. Plants have adjusted to these new conditions, with species that are more flammable taking root. Trees and shrubs are thirstier too, depriving the soil for much-needed moisture that can help fight flames. It's all work to lengthen the state's fire season. Some experts say wildfires, which are far more potent than in the past, can now happen year-round. The ongoing Camp Fire is California's most destructive in terms of structures ruined. 5 of the 10 most destructive on record in the state have now occurred in the last 2 years. Some have suggested removing trees to reduce the megablazes. For now, firefighters are focused on tackling the more immediate problem, while residents can only hope to avert the worst.
Next, the trial of infamous drug baron Joaquin El Chapo Guzman opened in a Brooklyn federal court this week. It is expected to last up to 4 months and could be one of the most expensive trials in U.S. history. The Mexican kingpin escaped captivity 3 times before finally being extradited to the United States. Aaron Ogunkeye has more now on his 20-year life of crime.
Born into poverty, Joaquin Guzman Loera built a billion-dollar empire from the ground up. His base, Sinaloa, a green and isolated state, far from the watchful eye of the authorities and ideal for drug cultivation. His illicit business would go on to spread across 50 countries worldwide. The man known as El Chapo, or Shorty, was captured in Guatemala in 1993. He was imprisoned for drug trafficking, kidnapping, and murder before escaping a high-security prison in 2001. He would eventually become the world's most powerful drug lord.
He's responsible for the death of over 10,000 people. And he not only has killed many of those, he has brutally tortured them, mutilated them, before throwing them out of cars and trucks, and in some cases leaving them out in the open highway in front of women and children.
Authorities caught up with Guzman again in February of 2014, after 13 years on the run. He was captured in a joint raid by Mexican and U.S. forces on a hotel beach resort in western Mexico. The cartel chief had been moving between houses in the area, connected by a network of underground tunnels. His rearrest was considered a huge coup for the government, until he escaped yet again in 2015. Using a mile-long tunnel to break out of what was supposed to be Mexico's most secure prison. He stayed on the run for just 6 months before being recaptured in 2016. But this time, Mexico applied years of lessons learned. He was extradited to the United States, where Mexican authorities said he would have a harder time running operations from his New York prison cell, and where judges and jury members are less likely to be intimidated or bribed into leniency. U.S. prosecutors say they will attempt to show that El Chapo personally committed at least 33 murders and made some $14 billion in illegal profits over the span of more than 20 years.
Ometepe in Nicaragua was once known as a cool, off-the-beaten-path island, welcoming travelers looking for a little piece of heaven. But Ometepe has now been caught up in the protests and political violence that have rocked Nicaragua since April. A paramilitary anti-riot squad led a hunt for opposition protesters on the island, scaring away tourists who used to flock there in the hundreds.
Tucked away on Nicaragua's Lake Coquibolca, Ometepe has been called an island oasis, known for its two volcanoes, Concepcion and Maderas. It's long been a tourist destination and saw hundreds of visitors daily, at least until recently.
There used to be 250 tourists that would come every day to Ometepe before April 18th. As of 15 days ago, it had gone down to about 20-25 a day, but now there are only 5 or 6 maximum.
The reason? Waves of demonstrations that have rocked the Central American nation since April 18th. In October, the protest movement demanding President Daniel Ortega's departure after nearly 12 years in power finally swept over Ometepe. It wasn't long before paramilitary police loyal to the head of state arrived and cracked down hard, leaving residents in fear.
As the island has been besieged by the paramilitary anti-riot squad, there is more fear. We even had some reservations for November and December, but some of the November reservations have already been canceled.
It's left Ometepe's 40,000-odd residents seeking alternatives to tourism to make ends meet.
I have my cattle, my cows, my animals. I have my farm, so we've survived. What's more, with some savings that we put away, it has helped us also to survive.
Nicaragua relies on tourism for a major part of its annual revenue. Government estimates now put losses of 20% on the $811 million that had been expected in the sector this year, with the International Monetary Fund for its part warning of a slump of 4% in the country's GDP.
America's former First Lady, Michelle Obama, has begun a 12-stop arena tour to promote her new book called Becoming. She spoke to a crowd of 14,000 in her hometown of Chicago this week, presented by star TV host Oprah Winfrey. She also gave a sneak peek interview to ABC reporter Robin Roberts, filling her in on her public and private life as First Lady.
Reflecting on the politics of race, Donald Trump, her couple, and motherhood. In an exclusive interview with ABC News, Michelle Obama discussed some of the revelations made in her new book. Among these, the former First Lady admitted she didn't initially believe her husband could become president.
I think I did what a lot of black folks were doing. We were afraid to hope, because it's hard to believe that the country that oppressed you could one day be led by you. And they didn't think the country was ready, and so my attitude was a reflection of that skepticism.
Michelle Obama also talked about the man who was elected to succeed her husband and said she never forgot how Donald Trump helped spread rumors about Barack Obama's birth certificate, namely that he was secretly a Muslim who was born in Kenya. For the former First Lady, this made the 2016 election results even harder to swallow.
You said, "I will always wonder about what led so many, women in particular, to reject an exceptionally qualified female candidate and instead choose a misogynist as their president."
I implored people to focus and to think about what it takes to be commander-in-chief.
Michelle Obama also set politics aside to talk about her private life and her visions of womanhood and motherhood. This included revelations that she had a miscarriage and that she resorted to IVF to give birth to her 2 daughters. And despite often being cast as the perfect couple, the book also discloses that Michelle and Barack Obama went to marriage counseling, something the former First Lady has decided to wear as a badge of honor.
Marriage counseling for us was one of those ways where we learned how to talk out our differences. I know too many young couples who struggle and think that somehow there's something wrong with them. And I want them to know that Michelle and Barack Obama, who have a phenomenal marriage and who love each other, we work on our marriage.
Michelle Obama has embarked on a US-wide tour to promote her book, further solidifying her status as a living icon and as a role model for millions of Americans.
Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, has already been published in 31 languages, and the former First Lady will be here in Paris to promote it next month. All right, we'll wrap up now with a last look at Marvel legend Stan Lee. The man who reinvented the American comic book died this week, aged 95. The feisty writer, editor, and publisher created iconic characters like Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Black Panther, Daredevil, Thor, Ant-Man, and the X-Men. Lee catapulted Marvel from a tiny venture into the world's #1 publisher of comic books and later a multimedia giant. His fantastic but flawed creations made him a real-life superhero to entertainment lovers around the world. Well, that's all the time we have for this Inside the Americas. We'll see you again next week for all the news from north to south.
From North to South Africa, from Bamako to Nairobi, from Accra to Mogadishu. Bringing you all the political, economic, cultural and social news from Africa for a better insight into an ever-changing continent.
Across Africa, presented by Georgia Calvin-Smith on France 24 and France24.com.